whenever I listen back to something that I do, it just makes me feel weird.
Hi, my lovely. Hi. Welcome to America's Got Talent.
In the summer of 2018, you probably remember seeing a video of a quiet, painfully shy schoolgirl from a small English village walking onto the biggest stage in America. She looked fragile. Her hands were shaking, and her voice was barely a whisper as she talked to the judges. And then, the music started. What happened next wasn't just a performance, it was an explosion. A raw, untamed force of talent that seemed to come from another soul entirely. In that moment, 13-year-old Courtney Hadwin became an overnight global sensation. Her audition for America's Got Talent was called a once-in-a-generation discovery. But the heartbreaking truth is that the very power that fueled her incredible performances was also threatening to tear her world apart. This is the story of how the stage that made her a star also became her biggest fear, and how the dream of fame spiraled into a secret battle with crippling anxiety that nearly silenced her for good. At just 13, Courtney Hadwin had the voice of a rock and roll legend, a voice that shook the building and brought millions to their feet. But what the cameras and cheering crowds never saw was the silent struggle happening behind the curtain. The intense, suffocating pressure of global fame kicked off a secret battle with an anxiety so severe, it threatened to end her career before it even really began. This isn't just a story about a viral audition. It's the story of a young girl fighting to find her voice in a world that tried to define her, control her, and almost broke her. It's a story of survival, resilience, and the heartbreaking cost of being different. The date was June 12, 2018. The show was the 13th season of America's Got Talent, a global stage known for making dreams come true. Onto that stage walked a young girl from Heselden, a small village in County Durham, England, who looked like a strong gust of wind could blow her over. Her name was Courtney Hadwin, and she was just 13 years old. As she stood before the judges, Simon Cowell, Howie Mandel, Mel B, and Heidi Klum, you could feel the nervousness coming off her in waves. She fidgeted, her eyes darting around the massive auditorium. When Mel B asked about her favorite subject in school, her answer was a quiet, mumbled, music. Her father, Paul, watched from the wings, his face a mix of hope and terror. He explained to host Tyra Banks that while his daughter had this incredible gift, she struggled with her nerves and shyness. At home, he said, she's quiet. But when she sings, she turns into a different person. Everyone was probably bracing for a sweet, maybe shaky, performance from a nervous teenager. The band hit the opening chords of Otis Redding's 1968 classic, Hard to Handle. And then, it happened, the shy girl was gone. In her place was a hurricane of sound and energy. A raw, blues-soaked wail erupted from her, a sound so powerful and mature it seemed impossible it was coming from a 13-year-old. She stomped, kicked, and flailed her arms, her body twisting with every note as if possessed by the spirit of rock and roll itself. She wasn't just singing the song, she was tearing it from her soul and throwing it at a stunned audience. The judges' faces said it all. Jaws were on the floor. Simon Cowell, the guy who's notoriously hard to please, just sat there with his mouth open, his eyes wide with disbelief. When it was over, Courtney instantly snapped back into the shy girl from before, covering her face as if waking from a dream. Howie Mandel spoke first, his voice filled with awe. He compared the moment to Clive Davis discovering Janis Joplin. "Oh my gosh," Mandel said. "You are not from this era. You're from a whole different era." Simon Cowell, looking completely floored, leaned into his mic. "Bloody hell, Courtney," he began. "You were this shy little thing when you came out. And then you sing, and you're like a lion. I mean, genuinely, incredible." He called it an audition he would never, ever forget, but it was Howie Mandel who sealed her fate. Declaring he couldn't just give her a yes, he stood on the judge's desk and slammed his hand on the golden buzzer, shooting a shower of golden confetti onto the stage and sending Courtney straight to the live shows. The reaction was immediate and huge. The video of her audition went beyond viral, it was a global phenomenon. Host Tyra Banks would later announce that the clip had been viewed hundreds of millions of times. She was an instant star. News outlets everywhere scrambled to tell the story of the quiet English schoolgirl with the voice of a blues rock legend. Her journey through the competition was a series of explosive performances. She took on James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild, and a show-stopping version of River Deep, Mountain High. Each week, she unleashed the lion Simon had described. But in the finale, in a result that shocked and angered many of her fans, Courtney didn't make it into the top 5. She was eliminated, finishing in 6th place, but in today's world, winning isn't always the most important thing. Courtney's impact was undeniable. The next logical step seemed obvious, a major record deal and a fast track to stardom. What no one knew was that the same shy girl who captivated the world was about to face a battle far scarier than any panel of judges. The real tragedy wasn't losing a TV show, it was what the spotlight would do to her once the cameras turned off. The move from a quiet village life to the center of American entertainment is a shock for anyone, let alone a 13-year-old. For Courtney, who was naturally reserved and anxious, it was a brutal adjustment. While the world saw a fearless rock and roll powerhouse on stage, a very different story was playing out behind the scenes. The pressure was taking a serious toll. Her anxiety, something she'd dealt with her whole life, was cranked up to an unbearable degree. She has talked about the social anxiety she battled, a struggle that made even normal conversations feel overwhelming. Before performances, she would be physically sick, shaking with a fear so intense it was paralyzing. This wasn't just pre-show jitters, it was a deep psychological battle every single time she had to perform. The stage, her only place of release, was also becoming the source of her deepest fear. The pressure wasn't just internal. Suddenly, Courtney was a public figure, and with that came cruel and invasive scrutiny. After her audition, she became a target for bullies, both at school and online. She shared the heartbreaking experience of classmates mocking her for her unique, raspy singing style. Online, the attacks were even worse. Strangers hiding behind keyboards posted hurtful comments about her performances, her looks, and her stage presence. For a young teenager already grappling with social anxiety, this was devastating. Her parents, Paul and Anne-Marie, have spoken about their terror watching their child get thrown into such a harsh spotlight. Her mother confessed, "Fame is terrifying when it's your child, but it's her dream, and we stand by her." They were her rock, but even they couldn't fully shield her from the psychological damage of global fame and online hate. Then came the weight of expectations. The Janis Joplin comparison, meant as a huge compliment, became a double-edged sword. It was a legendary standard to live up to. Simon Cowell had called her a lion, but how can a 13-year-old be a lion every single week, on command, for millions of viewers? The industry and the public now expected that explosive energy every time she stepped near a microphone. Anything less felt like a letdown. After AGT, the music industry machine kicked into high gear. In December 2018, it was announced that Courtney had signed a record deal with Simon Cowell's label, Psycho Music, and Arista Records. This was the dream. She was invited back for America's Got Talent, The Champions in 2019, where she performed her first original song, Pretty Little Thing, a sign she was ready to create her own identity, but a major label is a machine with its own agenda. Years later, Courtney reflected on this time, saying, "I think when you're that age and introduced to the music world, it's very big and scary and you kinda let the people in the suits tell you what to do and how to do it." She was put into writing sessions where, at 14, she was being told what to write about. She recalled, "All I was able to say was, 'Oh, I love my dog, it's just not great.' I needed to grow up and live my life, and experience things to be able to write the songs I now have." The shy girl from Heselden was now a commodity, a viral sensation the industry was trying to package and sell. The cracks that had started to show under the bright lights of AGT were about to become fractures under the immense weight of the music industry. The record deal with Psycho and Arista should have been the triumphant next chapter. It was validation from Simon Cowell himself. But for an artist as raw as Courtney, the formulaic world of a major record label was a tough fit. The dream quickly started to show its cracks. In October 2019, she released her first EP, The Cover Sessions. It featured live covers of songs by artists like Harry Styles and Lil Nas X. While it showed off her voice, it wasn't the original, blues rock album that the fans who fell in love with her on AGT were waiting for. It felt more like a product of the label system than a true artistic statement. Behind the scenes, the disconnect was growing. The music industry loves marketable, easily categorized artists. Courtney, with her mix of 60s rock, soul, and blues, was an anomaly. The very authenticity that made her a star was now seen as a commercial problem. It's a classic music business tragedy. An artist is signed for their originality, only to have that originality sanded down for mass consumption. This clash led to a quiet but major turning point. At some point, Courtney parted ways with Psycho Music. This was complicated when Psycho effectively ceased operations as a frontline record company in 2020, leaving many of its artists in limbo. In a comment to a fan on YouTube years later, Courtney confirmed her new direction, stating her new music was, "All me for this one, completely independent, finally doing it my way." That statement says everything about her experience in the major label system. She had to break away to get her identity back. As if that wasn't enough, the COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to a halt. For a performer like Courtney, whose entire artistic expression is channeled through the energy of live performance, the global shutdown wasn't just a career setback, it was the silencing of her main outlet. In that silence, the darkest parts of the internet began to churn out rumors. With no new music or shows, baseless and cruel stories started to fill the void, including completely fabricated tales of her being in a serious car accident. These hoaxes, which have been repeatedly debunked, sent waves of panic through her fanbase. This highlights one of the deepest tragedies of her journey. Her life and safety became fodder for heartless online clickbait. The struggle was no longer just about creative control. It was about protecting her own story and her sanity from a world that felt entitled to every part of her. The combination of professional disappointment, a global pandemic, and constant online negativity created a perfect storm. The girl who had shot to fame like a rocket seemed to have vanished. Her tragedy wasn't one single event. It was the slow, grinding collision of a unique, sensitive soul with the unforgiving machinery of fame. Many wondered if they would ever hear the lion roar again. For many young artists, leaving a major label like Psycho could be a career death sentence. But for Courtney Hadwin, it was a declaration of independence. It was the moment she stopped letting the people in the suits tell her what to do and started to trust herself. The quiet years that followed weren't a break, they were a period of reinvention. Freed from commercial expectations, Courtney reconnected with what made her love music in the first place: raw, emotional honesty. She teamed up with producer Kevin Bowe, a creative partner who, in her words, just gets it, gets me. This partnership was key. It empowered her to write from her own experiences and create music that was truly hers. In 2023, the silence was broken. Courtney re-emerged, not as a child prodigy from a talent show, but as a young, independent artist in complete control. She began releasing original singles like Breakable, That Girl Don't Live Here, and Monsters. They were gritty, soulful, and deeply personal. The lyrics spoke of vulnerability and resilience. In the live version of Breakable, she sings, "I won't apologize for my honesty, I'm strong enough to tell you I'm feelin' weak. I will not be broken more than once." It felt like a direct statement on her journey. She started using social media as a direct line to her fans, sharing snippets of new songs and talking about her creative process. She was building her own community, on her own terms. Most importantly, she returned to the stage, playing intimate gigs mainly in the UK. This was a huge step for someone who had battled such intense performance anxiety. It was proof she had faced her fears. Her evolution is culminating in her long-awaited debut album. Recent announcements have revealed the title, Little Miss Jagged, set for release on September 12, 2025. The title itself perfectly captures her journey, a nod to the jagged edges of her voice, her performance style, and her life. The album is described as a mix of soul, rock, funk, and punk. A recent single, Die and Stay Pretty, tells the personal story of watching a friend struggle with substance abuse, a mature theme she's now able to explore. She's described the album as the most personal she's ever been with her songwriting. Now in her early 20s, Courtney Hadwin is finally the artist she was always meant to be. She faced the crushing weight of global fame as a child, battled severe anxiety, endured online bullying, and navigated the music industry. And she survived. Courtney's story is a powerful testament to resilience. But what do you think? Is an artist better off fighting for their vision independently, or is the platform of a major label worth the creative compromises? Let us know your thoughts on Courtney's incredible journey in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the true stories behind your favorite artists, make sure to like and subscribe for more. The heartbreaking tragedy of Courtney Hadwin isn't what the sensationalist headlines want you to believe. There was no single, dramatic downfall. The tragedy was quieter. It was the tragedy of a shy, sensitive kid being thrown into a global spotlight she wasn't ready for. It was the tragedy of having her unique talent nearly sanitized by an industry that puts formulas over feelings. It was the tragedy of battling internal demons like anxiety while also fighting off external ones like online trolls, but to focus only on the tragedy is to miss the most important part of her story, the triumph. Courtney Hadwin's triumph isn't about record sales or chart positions, it's about her survival and her fierce dedication to her own truth. She walked through the fire of child stardom and came out the other side, not undamaged, but forged into a stronger, more authentic version of herself. She took back her story, her music, and her power, from the shy 13-year-old who set the world on fire to the independent young woman releasing her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, on her own terms. Her journey is a profound lesson. It's a reminder that true success isn't about how bright the initial explosion is, but about having the endurance to keep the flame burning. Courtney Hadwin's story is a powerful reminder that true strength isn't about never falling, it's about how you get back up and find your own voice, ready to sing another day.